from the top three. Both of the first and the second place players, Reels and Savit, have both been eliminated. So this is a huge game, man. Not only for him, but also for the pride of the first tournament. They've got to stay alive, man.
So this is where you see Wild Growth really shining, is against a matchup like Shaman.
Yeah.
They're overloading in addition to playing their efficient spells.
Yep.
So if you manage to get one step ahead, it's really hard for Shaman to climb out of this because Lightning Storm doesn't do a good job against these big efficient minions. Cards like Hex and cards like Feral Spirit are really what you're hunting for in order to keep this board control down, because you have to get so much of it on the board. So this Wild Growth is going to be a really critical draw here. I'd be very surprised if he coined it out, because if you see this turn 2 Wild Growth into 3, on his effective turn 3, I'm sorry, on his turn 3 and an effective turn 4, because of this Wild Growth, you're seeing an Azure Drake, and that's going to be followed up by a Keeper of the Grove or by this Argent Commander. So big pressure going to be coming from StrifeCro this game. But Trump's hand is looking pretty good.
Yeah, it is pretty good. I mean, to get the Feral Spirit, that's one of the things you really want to get early on. Flame Tongue Totem, also a really nice draw early on. So those are two of the things that you definitely would like to have.
Right.
And even now getting the Argent Squire and stuff, you could just Argent Squire Totem up here. I don't think that's bad. You could even Argent Squire Flame Tongue if you want to start getting aggressive. There's a lot of options here that are all pretty reasonable. Both of those are pretty reasonable. Feral Spirit also pretty reasonable. But you are overloading yourself for the next turns, and I think he's going to want to get that Violet Teacher down. So I don't think he's going to go for the Feral Spirit this turn. At least it would surprise me a bit, but he is going to go for it. Okay.
I actually really like the Argent Squire and the Totem up here because it gets you so much value from your Flame Tongue Totem in this position. So StrifeCro now, wow, so many options at his disposal. He can now save this coin to accelerate to his scenarios now because his Chill Wind Yetis come out. So you're going to see turn 4 Yeti, turn 5 Azure Drake, and then turn 6 Argent Commander and follow it up here. But this is a pretty big draw from Trump. But this is sort of exactly what we were talking about. Where
he's going to Flame Tongue this.
Right, you got a Flame Tongue. You got a Flame Tongue in some sort of manner here. The question is how you respond to it. So do you attack this Yeti directly, or do you just start going for the face and rely on the counter attack from the Totem to deal the extra damage? And frankly, I kind of like the counter attack maneuver.
Oh wow! Whoa!
Ignore what I said. He's not doing the counter attack.
Okay, so yeah, for a second there, I was really confused. But yeah, so that makes sense. I mean, that's what I thought he was going to do. But then for a second, I was like, for a second, I had a little freak out. I was like, don't do it! Don't attack both wolves into the Yeti! Oh God, no! He's having a breakdown. But he is going to come out with the Argent Squire here, or sorry, Argent Commander. And I mean, getting down those early Flame Tongue Totems can be so awesome. As a Shaman, when you get away with it, if they have a Wrath in their hand right away, that is, it doesn't work out so well for you. But when they don't, it's pretty fantastic. And now, I mean, this is where it kind of gets a little bit harder. How much value do you place on this Flame Tongue Totem? Do you value the Flame Tongue Totem enough to hex that commander or to Lightning Storm it? Is it that high value of a minion for yourself? Or do you just say, no, there's a good chance that he's actually going to be able to, if he gets a taunt, that's okay, he didn't get a taunt. But, I mean, there's a chance that he could obviously draw into a swipe or a Wrath for next turn anyway, and then you kind of wasted your removal if you do it like that. So, I mean, where's your thought process here? Do you think that he should be Lightning Storming or hexing this to get rid of it and preserve that Flame Tongue?
I don't think so, because if he does, he's going to find himself in pretty much the exact same position next turn, which is his opponent just developed and keeps punching through. So this position that he's found himself in now is seeded in the fact that he uses turn 3 Feral Spirit instead of turn 3 Argent Squire and Totem. If he had done that, this game would have been heavily in Trump's favor. But instead now he's finding himself with the overload being critical to this matchup, because if he plays the Argent Squire and he plays a Totem, he gets to kill the Yeti for a Totem and a shield on the Argent Squire. Then he gets to place another Totem and Feral Spirit if he wants to, or use Feral Spirit to help protect his Flame Tongue Totem. So this sort of his sequencing here really putting a huge dent in his game plan. But even as it stands, it's really not that bad, because what I see happening is I see this Argent Commander attacking this Flame Tongue Totem a lot of times. And so Trump's going to be able to respond with Fire Elemental here. The issue with that is that StrifeCro has the initiative pretty much throughout the remainder of the game at this point. So Trump's going to be fighting to get back his board position unless he chooses to use this Lightning Storm this turn. But when he uses Lightning Storm, again, he's sort of in the same spot where he doesn't have the damage to kind of counteract what StrifeCro is going to be doing, because now Druid's going into
early next turn either.
Right, Druid's going into its critical turns now, where you're going to see Ancient of Lore come down a lot, and we know he has Cenarius in his hand. So if he uses his Lightning Storm now, that Cenarius is basically going to go uncontested with his 2 taunts, in addition to it being a 5/8. I'm pretty tough to see anything other than a Fire Elemental here, but he certainly has his options.
Yeah, I mean, I was definitely surprised. Oh, wow. Okay, well, he's not going to go for that, obviously, now. So it is going to be the Lightning Storm. Yeah, and I was definitely surprised to see him go for the Feral Spirit. The early Overlord can be kind of brutal. It can kind of later turns, and he's kind of paying for that now, honestly. But we do have a number of options here as well. I mean, he could just go with Zerdrake and just hero power into the 1/1, take that out that way. You obviously can go with the Keeper as well if you want to do a full clear, something like that. You can do Keeper and Harvest Golem. There's a lot of options here, and I mean, I think all of them have, they're pretty reasonable. But I feel like, knowing StrifeCro and how you talk about him wanting board control, I think it's just going to be Harvest Golem and Keeper, yeah. So
I agree with this play as well. And sort of more to the point we were talking about Overload, Trump now doesn't have access to Fire Elemental this turn. So his sequencing
that's
really,
a nice pickup.
That has got to be one of the best draws in his deck at this moment. But his sequencing is actually relatively poor this game, and it's cost him quite a bit of ground in that regard. So,
well, this is actually even better. He's going to be able to get a 1/1 from that, and he's going to be able to clear just with the shield. So I think that even if he can draw the Drake, obviously didn't come into play here. So a very nice play there from Trump. Makes a lot of sense. And now he is starting to get kind of, oh god, Savage Roar, Force of Nature next turn. So he does have that available now. That combo is going to be there. But if we were to see some of this board kind of stay alive, and a Bloodlust come out, this is where it starts to get scary. When you have 3, 4, 5 minions out, and you can get the Bloodlust down, that's where the combo really starts to get crazy.
Yeah, this is actually a pretty tough turn for StrifeCro, because it looks like he's going to be floating a mana no matter what. That draw, I think, is extremely good at the moment, because it keeps his Harvest Golem alive and well. So he's going to use this Innervate and the hero power. So that's it's not an exciting looking draw, but that is probably the best draw in his deck at the moment, because it's effectively a Harvest Golem. For 1 mana. So now StrifeCro, again, he still has this big lead. Trump's going to be able to Fire Elemental counter on the backswing, but then you're going to see Cenarius come out, and that's going to be followed by this Force of Nature and Savage Roar, which is either going to clean up a huge amount of board position, or it's going to put a lot of pressure on your opponent. So again, his sequencing makes the world of difference in this game. That Stormforge Axe, by the way, is another pretty fantastic draw. So again, the Haymaker's sort of being thrown back and forth here. Trump manages to take an initiative this turn, but again, Cenarius, this is going to be a big play.
Oh God,
a second Force of Nature. So the Hex in his hand is really critical, and that's why I think that Trump's draw is panning out this way. It ends up being a little bit lucky, because his sequencing could have been so dominant this game, and he could have such a fantastic board position. Yeah. Because even the turn with the Violet Teacher, he puts himself at risk of a swipe. So if his opponent has a swipe in his hand, it's like so much lost causes being happening here. And this Azure Drake, we were touching on it earlier, the reason I thought it was such a powerful draw was because it opened up the option of having turn 8 Azure Drake and Hex instead of the former position he had, which was just have the Hex and nothing else to follow it. So the extra draw from this is extremely critical. And so he's managed to take initiative here, but a lot of that's founded on the fact that
keep in mind, the Savage Roar is also going to be worthwhile because it's going to work on the Hex too.
Right.
So that's an additional 2 damage. So we are looking at a lot of damage here. And I mean, I think he's probably just going to use at least 1 Force of Nature to clean up the board. He could do Force of Nature and a hero power and clear the board. You do 2 into the Drake, 1 into the Fire Ellie, and then you're going to have to take 6 damage to the face. But then that does clear it, and that keeps your Force of Nature Savage Roar combo in hand. I actually like that move a lot, because especially playing one of the Force of Natures, it comes off as a very desperate move.
Right.
It comes off as a play where he's thinking, oh God, I just had to do this, now I don't have my combo anymore. But he still is going to have it. I mean, he can go Ancient Lore and draw cards, but I feel like you need to get rid of this board, and I think the Force of Nature plus hero power, oh wow, he's going to Savage Roar instead. So.
Right. I think one of the things that's factoring into his decision to use the Savage Roar here is that he counteracts his opponent's board position, and frankly, Trump doesn't have a lot of minions left. He's burned through a lot of stuff already. Unbound's gone, Feral Spirit's gone, one of the Violet Teachers is gone, and the Violet Teacher sort of signifies, by the way, that he's going to have something like Bloodlust in his deck, so he wants to keep the board clear to minimize his damage, and he also gets a little bit of value from the dog. But this Feral Spirit, again, sort of touching on it, Trump has had a very good pan out here, and a testament, rightfully so, his deck's full of good cards. This is what Shaman puts himself in a position to do, but he could have had such a blowout game if he had sequenced this early game better. I keep stressing it, but it's like, this is the position we get into now. So StrifeCro, in my opinion, should have almost no chance to win this game, and instead he's got a shaky position, but still a pretty decent one nonetheless.
I honestly still feel like StrifeCro's ahead. Do you not agree? I mean, look at these. Look at what's in his hand. He's on turn 8. He has 2 1-mana cards in his hand. That's it. He's at a position where he can't really spend any mana anymore. Obviously, he has a way to clear this board and everything. You can obviously Rockbiter up a Wolf, trade into that, and then you can do Okay, you can do this way as well. Yeah, I mean, so probably Rock Fighter and then the weapon onto that. Oh, okay, he just wants to take damage.
He's going to Earthshock this 4-2.
Yeah, okay, so he really is that. And this actually makes sense.
His board position
keep the
isn't
wolves alive.
amazing, but I think he's slightly ahead because, again, his deck is still so stacked with good draws. And this is what Shaman does, but now you find yourself in a position where StrifeCro is able to weather the storm on the back of this Ancient Allure, where normally you would have been able to force this Ancient Allure to have to dig really hard for specific answers. So he's fought back through it, but in my opinion, I don't think he should be in a position to fight back through it.
Now, what do you think about going for the 1 damage instead of just taking out a wolf?
I think that the one damage, the reason it's so important here is because he needs to be digging. Like if he just fights through this board position, what ends up happening is you're turning it into a top deck board. But his hand is good enough to kind of fight through what's happening here because he doesn't feel a big threat of lethal. And again, because of the Violet Teacher, he wants to keep the board cleared to minimize the impact from Bloodlust. So the extra card of paramount importance because Trump's sitting on an empty hand.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, it's so painful in this situation. He keeps just drawing 3 turns in a row. He's drawing a 1 mana card. And it's a situation where you just can't spend your mana. You never really want to be in that situation. You know, the hero power is not bad, but if he had a flame tongue out or something.
Oh my gosh. That Azure Drake is huge because he's still got the full complements of swipe in his deck as well.
Yeah.
And sort of what we were talking about, this is one of the styles that StrifeCro thrives at, is he fights heavily for these board positions, and when the games get traded down, he has a density of strong minions in his deck, so he's able to push through.
Can do another card draw here, see what he gets. And remember, he still has the innervate, so if he does draw that swipe, he can obviously go for it. And you look at the HP here, 13 HP. Showing Yeti, he's going to innervate for that. Because the thing is, all he has to do is get through this taunt, and he has his combo, he wins the game, basically.
Oh my gosh! Another Azure Drake, but then again, this is sort of the same thing that this Shaman deck. A Hex off of the Azure Drake! This is a big turn for Trump, and this is exactly what he needed to stay in this game after this relatively lucky sequence.
He still loses next turn.
From StrifeCro coming out.
He's still dead.
Is he really still dead?
Yeah, he's still dead. Because the Drake clears, and then he says,
oh my gosh, I wasn't looking at his life total.
Yeah.
You say some pretty dumb stuff when you're casting sometimes.
It happens,
you get excited about these games, and next thing you know, you forget that one player can just kill the other player. So ignore everything I said again. StrifeCro is going to take this match.
Yeah.
In very close series, though.
Very close. But that is going to be that, man. And our final top 3 player from the last tournament now eliminated. And that is going to do it. The 4th Nature Savage Roar comes out, and StrifeCro secures the victory. Another 3-2. That is our second 3-2. We've had 2 3-1s, 2 3-2s. Very close series. Trump playing very well. But we have to look